Don't you dare walk out that door, Jungkook. Taehyung's voice cracked, sharp with anger, and something far more dangerous beneath it, fear. The rain slammed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse like it was trying to break in, drowning the room in chaos that matched the storm tearing through his chest. The lights flickered once, just enough to make everything feel unreal, like a memory already collapsing as it formed. Jungkook froze with one hand on the doorframe, his back rigid, shoulders tight. He didn't turn around. He couldn't. Taehyung knew that posture too well. It was the same way Jungkook stood every time he was running from something he didn't know how to explain, or didn't want to. "You think walking away fixes this?" Taehyung said, his voice lower now, trembling despite his effort to steady it. His bare feet crunched against broken glass scattered across the marble floor, shards from the picture frame Jungkook had knocked off the wall earlier. The sting grounded him. Pain felt easier than watching Jungkook leave. "I said I'm sorry," Jungkook replied quietly, too quietly. "I didn't mean for it to turn into this." Taehyung let out a bitter laugh. "You never do, and yet here we are, again." 6 hours earlier, they had been laughing in that same room, tangled in sheets, the city glowing softly behind them as Jungkook whispered promises he sounded like he believed. Now the air felt hollow, stretched thin between two people who suddenly didn't know how to reach each other. Jungkook finally turned. His eyes were red, jaw clenched like he was holding something back. "I was scared of losing you." "Then why do you keep pushing me away?" Taehyung shot back. The words came out sharper than he intended, slicing through the silence like glass. "Why do you disappear every time I try to get close?" The question hung there, unanswered. The rain softened, but the space between them only grew heavier. Something fragile had snapped, not just tonight, but over weeks of half-truths, locked doors, and conversations that ended before they ever began. Jungkook took a step forward, then stopped, like he didn't trust himself to move any closer. His knuckles were bruised. Taehyung noticed them now and felt a sick twist in his stomach. "What happened?" Taehyung asked, quieter. Jungkook looked away. "Nothing." "That's a lie." Silence stretched until it felt unbearable. Then Jungkook exhaled, shaky. "I got a letter 2 months ago." Taehyung's heart skipped. "From who?" "My mother." The word hit like a punch. She passed away, Jungkook." "That's what I thought," Jungkook said, voice hollow. "But the letter was real, her handwriting. She said she didn't leave me. She said she was forced." Taehyung stared at him, the world tilting. "Forced by who?" Jungkook swallowed hard. "My father." The pieces began to fall into place, ugly and sharp. The distance. The nights Jungkook sat alone in his studio until dawn. The way he flinched at questions that brushed too close to the truth. "He faked her death," Jungkook continued, words spilling now like he couldn't stop them. "Told me she abandoned me so I'd hate her, so I'd need him." Taehyung's knees felt weak. He sank onto the edge of the couch, breath uneven. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I don't know what's real anymore," Jungkook said, his voice breaking for the first time. "And I didn't want to lose the only thing that still felt real." Taehyung looked up at him then, really looked. Jungkook wasn't just distant, he was unraveling. "Then why are you destroying us?" Taehyung whispered. Jungkook didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a crumpled letter from his jacket pocket and handed it over with shaking fingers. Taehyung unfolded it, eyes scanning the first line before freezing. "This isn't just about your mother," Taehyung said slowly. Jungkook stared out the window, lightning illuminating his profile. "There's more. A name in the letter. A man I didn't recognize at first. He lives in Seoul, runs a company under a fake identity. He was with my mother before everything." Taehyung's chest tightened. "You think?" "I think he's my real father." The city below blinked on and off, unaware of the quiet collapse happening above it. Everything Jungkook thought he was, his name, his legacy, the shadow he'd spent his whole life trying to escape, suddenly meant nothing. "So what are you going to do?" Taehyung asked. Jungkook turned, eyes dark but resolved. End it, all of it. And what about us? Jungkook's expression softened, just enough to hurt. I was trying to keep you safe. From what? Taehyung asked. From who you think you'll become. From the damage, Jungkook said quietly. From me. Taehyung stood and crossed the distance between them, pressing his forehead to Jungkook's. Then don't do this alone. I don't deserve you, Jungkook whispered. That's not your decision to make. For a moment the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Then Jungkook spoke again, voice barely audible. I followed him. Taehyung stiffened. You promised you wouldn't. I had to, Jungkook said. I watched him through glass while he kissed his daughter like I didn't exist, like I was already erased. You think lying to me is protecting me? Taehyung's voice rose despite himself. I omitted. That's the same thing. Jungkook slammed his fist against the counter. My entire life is a curated lie, and you think I don't feel that ripping me apart? Taehyung's anger cracked, replaced by something colder. I stayed, through your silence, through your distance, and now you're telling me I wasn't worth the truth. Jungkook's shoulders sagged. If I say it out loud, it becomes real. Taehyung stepped closer. Then let it be real with me. The room fell silent except for the rain. Then Jungkook looked up, eyes wet. He saw me, he said. He smiled like he was expecting me. A chill ran through Taehyung's spine. What does that mean? I think this isn't a coincidence, Jungkook said. It's a game. Taehyung didn't hesitate. Then we play better. The morning light crept into the penthouse like it didn't belong there. Pale, hesitant, illuminating the wreckage left behind by the night. Broken glass still scattered the floor. The air smelled faintly of smoke and rain. Taehyung sat at the kitchen island, untouched coffee cooling in front of him, staring at nothing. Jungkook hadn't slept. Taehyung could tell by the way he moved, slow, deliberate, like every step had to be calculated. Like if he stopped moving, everything inside him would cave in. You followed him, Taehyung said finally, his voice quiet but sharp enough to cut. Didn't you? Jungkook didn't look up. I had to. You promised me, Taehyung said, standing now, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. You promised you wouldn't go alone, that you, tell me first. And what was I supposed to say? Jungkook snapped, turning suddenly. That I was spying on the man who might be my biological father, that I watched him laugh with a family that should have been mine. Taehyung felt the anger surge, hot and unforgiving. You think protecting me means lying to me? I didn't lie. You hid it, Taehyung shot back. That's the same damn thing and you know it. Jungkook slammed his fist against the counter, the sound echoing through the empty room. Everything I knew was a lie. My name, my blood, my past. You think I wasn't drowning. And you think I was. Taehyung's voice broke despite his effort to keep it steady. I stayed. Through your silence, your distance, your nights locked behind closed doors, I fought for us while you were already disappearing. Jungkook's shoulders sagged. If I say it out loud, it becomes real. Taehyung stepped closer, eyes burning. Then make it real with me, or stop pretending you're doing this for my sake. Silence fell heavy between them. Jungkook looked up, eyes glassy. He saw me. Taehyung froze. What? He looked straight at me, Jungkook said, and smiled like he wanted me to find him. A chill crawled up Taehyung's spine. This isn't just about the past anymore, is it? Jungkook shook his head. It's a game, and we're already in it. Before Taehyung could respond, his phone buzzed on the counter. One notification, one headline, his breath caught as he read it. Jungkook linked to illegal surveillance network. Shadow FINANCRS suspected. Taehyung shoved the phone toward Jungkook. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. Jungkook's face drained of color. I didn't leak anything. Then who did? Taehyung demanded. Who else knew where you were? I was followed, Jungkook said quietly. I didn't know. The screen refreshed, photos loaded, grainy, damning. One showed Jungkook stepping out of a dimly lit jazz bar near the river, eyes shadowed, expression unreadable. Taehyung's chest tightened. "You brought me into a war I didn't agree to fight." "I was trying to protect you," Jungkook said. "Stop saying that," Taehyung snapped. "Every time you say it, it means you've already made a decision without me." Jungkook looked at him then, really looked at him. Taehyung's anger wasn't just rage. It was fear, exhaustion, heartbreak layered too thick to peel apart. "You think I wanted this," Jungkook said softly. "You think I wanted my life to collapse overnight." "No," Taehyung said, "but I think part of you doesn't know how to live without chaos." Jungkook looked down. "Maybe I don't." Taehyung's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then what does that make me? The one you pull into the fire every time you burn?" Jungkook stepped forward, hands trembling. "You're the only thing keeping me from burning everything down." The silence shattered when Taehyung's phone buzzed again. Another alert, then another. "Turn on the TV," Taehyung said, his voice hollow. The screen flickered to life. A press conference, cameras, reporters shouting, and then Taehyung saw him. The man from the jazz bar, standing behind a podium like he owned the world. Beside him stood a woman. "My name is Min Seo-jin," she said into the microphone, her voice trembling but clear. "I am Jungkook's mother, and I was never dead." Jungkook staggered back like he'd been shot. "No, that's not possible." Taehyung stared at the screen, heart pounding. "That's her," he whispered. "That's really her." Seo-jin continued, tears in her eyes. "I was forced into hiding, threatened, lied about. I watched my son grow from afar, unable to reach him." The feed cut abruptly to black. Jungkook collapsed to his knees, breath ragged. "She's alive. She's been alive this whole time." Taehyung dropped down beside him, gripping his shoulders. "We have to find her." "What if this is another trap?" Taehyung asked, fear tightening his chest. "Does it matter?" Jungkook said, eyes wild. "If there's even a chance she's real, I have to know." Taehyung closed his eyes briefly, then nodded. "Then we go together, no more secrets." The location came an hour later, anonymous, rural, quiet in a way that felt wrong. They drove in silence. Taehyung watched Jungkook's hands grip the steering wheel, knuckles white, jaw locked like he was holding himself together by force alone. The house appeared at the end of a dirt road, faded paint, overgrown grass, a silence that pressed in on them. Jungkook hesitated on the porch, suddenly looking younger, smaller. Taehyung stood beside him, steady. The door opened. Seo-jin stood there, older, thinner, eyes wide with disbelief. "Jungkook," she breathed. He whispered one word, "Why?" Her knees buckled. Taehyung caught her before she hit the floor, guiding her to the couch as she sobbed. "I wanted to come back," she said. "He told me you'd hate me, that you thought I abandoned you." "You did," Jungkook said bitterly, "even if you didn't choose to." She pulled a flash drive from beneath a cushion. "I recorded everything, every deal, every threat. I was waiting for the right moment." Taehyung exchanged a glance with Jungkook. "This could destroy him." "That's why he let me surface," she said softly. "He wanted to bait you." A sudden crash shattered the window. "Get down," Taehyung shouted, dragging her to the floor as smoke filled the room. Men in tactical gear stormed inside. "Jungkook," one barked, gun raised. "You're under arrest for treason and conspiracy." Taehyung lunged forward. "He hasn't done anything." "Orders from above," the man replied flatly. Jungkook raised his hand slowly. "If I go with you, you leave them alone." "No," Taehyung said, his voice breaking. "You don't get to do this." Jungkook turned to him, eyes soft with something like apology. "I have to." They dragged him out. The door slammed shut. Taehyung stood frozen, flash drive clenched in his hand, the world rearranging itself around one terrifying truth. This wasn't just about Jungkook anymore. The holding facility didn't exist on any map. It was built underground, carved into stone and steel, humming with fluorescent lights that never dimmed. Jungkook sat alone in the interrogation room, wrists cuffed to a cold metal ring bolted into the table. Hours blurred into something shapeless. Every question circled the same accusation: treason, conspiracy, espionage. They wanted names he didn't have and confessions he refused to give. When the door opened again, the man who entered didn't wear tactical gear. He wore a tailored suit, shoes spotless, expression calm in a way that felt far more dangerous. "You look disappointed," the man said, pulling a chair back and sitting across from Jungkook. "I expected more fire." Jungkook met his gaze. "You already have what you want. Why am I still here?" The man smiled faintly. "Because you haven't broken yet." Across the city, Taehyung stood in a studio flooded with harsh white lights, microphones shoved inches from his face. Headlines crawled across screens behind him, twisting facts into weapons. He hadn't planned to speak. He hadn't wanted to, but silence had become complicity. "Did you know about Jungkook's alleged activities?" a reporter demanded. Taehyung's throat tightened. "No." "Are you denying involvement?" "I'm denying a lie," Taehyung said, his voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "What's happening right now is a coordinated attack, and you're helping it." A murmur rippled through the room. "Then why won't Jungkook testify?" another voice shouted. Taehyung swallowed. "Because he's being silenced." The broadcast cut abruptly. Phones across the country buzzed with alerts claiming Taehyung had stormed out, that he'd refused further questions. None of it was true. None of it mattered. Back underground, the man in the suit slid a tablet across the table. On the screen, Taehyung's press conference froze mid-frame, his expression resolute and raw. "You see," the man said, "he's becoming a liability." Jungkook's jaw clenched. "Leave him out of this." "That depends on you," the man replied. "Sign the statement, admit everything, we make this clean, quiet." He walks away untouched. Jungkook stared at the tablet at Taehyung's face. "And if I do?" The man leaned closer. "Then we destroy him publicly, slowly, piece by piece." Jungkook closed his eyes. "You won't stop." "No," the man agreed, "but you can choose who bleeds." The first blow came without warning. Pain exploded behind Jungkook's eyes. He bit down hard enough to taste blood, refusing to give them the sound they wanted. Hours later, Taehyung sat alone in a darkened apartment, the flash drive heavy in his pocket. Seo-jin slept fitfully in the guest room, nightmares stealing her breath. Taehyung replayed the recordings again and again. Contracts, threats, names spoken too casually for crimes this big. One name repeated more than the others. Chairman Kang. Taehyung's phone buzzed. An unknown number, a single message. "He's holding on for you. How long can you hold on for him?" Taehyung's hand shook. "Enough," he whispered. He reached out to people he'd avoided for years. Lawyers, journalists who still believed in truth, old allies who owed him favors. The machine began to move, slow at first, then faster. Back in the facility, Jungkook slumped against the wall of his cell, vision swimming. The man returned, irritation finally cracking his polished calm. "You're running out of time," he said. "So is Taehyung." Jungkook lifted his head with effort. "You underestimate him." The man laughed softly. "Everyone does." That night the leak dropped. Documents flooded the internet. Names trended within minutes. Footage surfaced of Chairman Kang shaking hands with foreign financiers, of backroom deals and staged disappearances. Seo-jin's recordings played on every major network, her voice shaking as she told the truth she'd buried for decades. The government denied everything, then denied denying it. Taehyung stood before cameras again, eyes hollow but burning. "This isn't about protecting an idol," he said. "This is about protecting the truth." Behind the scenes, panic spread. Orders changed. Chains of command fractured. The facility received a call just before dawn. Release him. The cell door opened. Jungkook squinted against the sudden light, barely able to stand as guards hauled him to his feet. He expected another trick, another lie. Instead, he was shoved outside into cool morning air. Taehyung was there. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Jungkook staggered forward, and Taehyung caught him without hesitation, arms wrapping tight like he was afraid Jungkook might vanish if he loosened his grip. "I thought I lost you," Taehyung said, his voice breaking openly now. Jungkook pressed his forehead to Taehyung's shoulder. "You didn't." They didn't celebrate, they didn't smile. Freedom came heavy, stained by everything it had cost. Days later, the city buzzed with rumors of resignations and arrests. Chairman Kang disappeared from public view. Seo Jin entered protective custody, finally safe but forever marked. At night, Taehyung lay awake beside Jungkook, listening to his uneven breathing. The argument that had started it all replayed in his mind, sharper now with hindsight. "You scared me," Taehyung whispered into the dark. Jungkook turned toward him. "I know. I don't want to be strong alone," Taehyung said. "I want us to survive together." Jungkook reached for his hand, squeezing gently. "Then we don't lie anymore, not even to protect each other." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, a city reckoning with truths it had ignored for too long. Taehyung closed his eyes, holding onto Jungkook's hand, knowing one thing with absolute certainty. The war wasn't over. But neither were they. The backlash didn't arrive all at once. It crept in through whispers, through edited clips, through carefully worded headlines that sounded neutral but cut just as deep. Taehyung woke up to see his name trending again, this time paired with words like manipulation, distraction, damage control. Some praised him as brave. Others painted him as reckless, accusing him of exploiting a crisis for attention. He tried not to read the comments. He failed. Across the room, Jungkook sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor like it might give him answers if he looked long enough. The marks on his wrists had faded to pale shadows, but the weight inside him hadn't lifted. He startled at small sounds. He flinched when doors closed too hard. "Don't," Taehyung said softly when he saw Jungkook's hand tremble reaching for his phone. "You don't need to see this." Jungkook let the phone drop. "They're turning you into the villain." Taehyung forced a small smile. "I've been called worse." "That's not the point," Jungkook said, voice tight. "I pulled you into this. You're paying for my past." Taehyung sat beside him, close but not touching yet. "You didn't force me. I chose you." Jungkook finally looked up. His eyes were tired in a way Taehyung had never seen before. "What if I keep dragging you down with me?" Taehyung answered without hesitation. "Then I'll sink with you, but I won't let you go under alone." The next day, the subpoena arrived. It was clean, official, impossible to ignore. Taehyung was ordered to testify before a closed committee reviewing the leaks. His name was no longer adjacent to the story. It was at the center of it. The lawyer warned him quietly. "They're not just interested in what you know. They want to see how much pressure you can take." Taehyung nodded. Pressure was familiar. What scared him was the idea of sitting in a room full of people who'd already decided who he was. Jungkook waited outside the hearing room, packing slowly, controlled, like he was counting his steps to stay grounded. When Taehyung disappeared behind the door, Jungkook's chest tightened. He hated that feeling, being powerless, watching someone he loved walk into a fight meant for him. Inside, the questions came sharp and relentless. Did you coordinate the release of classified material? No. Did you encourage Jungkook to withhold information from authorities? No. Did you benefit professionally from the exposure? Taehyung leaned forward, hands folded. If losing endorsements, being publicly attacked, and putting my safety at risk counts as a benefit, then sure. A pause, pen scratched. Someone cleared their throat. "Why stay involved?" a voice asked. "You could have walked away." Taehyung didn't hesitate, because the truth doesn't stop being true just because it's inconvenient. Hours later, he stepped back into the hallway, face pale but eyes steady. Jungkook was there immediately, searching him for damage. "I'm okay," Taehyung said before Jungkook could ask. He wasn't sure if it was true, but he needed it to be. That night the nightmares came. Jungkook woke up gasping, sweat soaking the sheets, hands clawing at the air like he was still trapped underground. Taehyung pulled him close, whispering his name again and again until the shaking slowed. "They told me you leave," Jungkook said hoarsely, voice barely there. "They said you'd get tired of protecting me." Taehyung's chest ached. "I'm right here." "What if one day you shouldn't be?" Jungkook asked. "What if staying with me costs you everything?" Taehyung held his face gently, forcing him to look up. "Then I'll decide when that day comes. Not fear, not them." In the following weeks, the world shifted in uncomfortable ways. Investigations expanded. Familiar faces vanished from public life. Seo Jin testified from behind protective glass, her words shaking an entire network that had relied on her silence. Taehyung canceled appearances. Jungkook withdrew completely. For the first time in years, there was no schedule dictating their days, just space. Too much space. One evening, Taehyung found Jungkook standing on the balcony, city lights stretching endlessly below. The look on his face made Taehyung's heart stutter. "You ever think about disappearing?" Jungkook asked quietly. Taehyung stepped closer. "Not without you." Jungkook exhaled a humorless laugh. "I mean really disappearing. No cameras, no statements, no versions of ourselves we have to maintain." Taehyung rested his forehead against Jungkook's shoulder. "I think about peace. If disappearing gets us there, then maybe." The idea took root faster than either of them expected. A few days later, Taehyung stood before a camera again, this time alone, expression calm but resolute. The statement was brief, carefully chosen. "I'm stepping back," he said. "Not because I'm guilty, not because I'm afraid, but because healing doesn't happen under a spotlight." The reaction was instant: shock, speculation, outrage, support, all of it loud. Behind closed doors, Taehyung packed a single bag. Jungkook watched silently. "You don't have to do this," Jungkook said. "I know," Taehyung replied. "That's why it matters." They left before dawn, no press, no announcement. Just two silhouettes slipping into a quiet life they didn't know how to live yet. Weeks passed somewhere coastal and anonymous. Mornings were slow. The ocean didn't care who they were. Jungkook learned how to sleep again. Taehyung learned how to be still. One night sitting on the sand, Jungkook spoke into the dark. "That argument, I thought it was the end." Taehyung smiled faintly. "It was the beginning." Jungkook turned toward him. "I don't want to go back to who I was." Taehyung reached for his hand. "Then don't, we'll build something new." The waves rolled in steadily, erasing footprints as soon as they appeared. Somewhere far away, the world kept arguing, accusing, forgetting. Here for now they stayed. Not healed, not finished, but finally facing the future together. The quiet didn't stay gentle forever. At first, it felt like mercy. Days without alarms. Names that didn't echo back from strangers' mouths. But time has a way of asking questions when noise finally fades. Taehyung noticed it in small things. Jungkook hesitating before opening emails. The way his smile arrived a second too late. The ocean helped, but it couldn't wash everything away. One afternoon, a letter arrived with no return address. Heavy paper, official seal. Taehyung recognized it instantly. "They found us," Jungkook said before Taehyung could speak. "Not like before," Taehyung replied, reading carefully. "It's an invitation, testimony, voluntary." Jungkook laughed quietly, without humor. Nothing about this was ever voluntary. They argued that night for the first time since leaving. Not loudly. Worse. Carefully. Each word chosen like it might bruise if dropped too hard. You don't owe them anything, Taehyung said. You paid enough. And you think hiding makes it end, Jungkook shot back. It just lets them control the story. Taehyung's chest tightened. I chose peace. And I chose truth, Jungkook said. We didn't choose the same thing. The silence after that settled deep, not anger, distance. Days passed with the argument hanging between them, unresolved. Taehyung walked the shoreline alone, replaying every moment that had led them here. He had stepped away to protect them both, but protection had slowly become a wall. That night, Jungkook finally spoke again. They told me if I testify publicly, the remaining charges disappear, he said quietly. No shadows, no more waiting for the other shoe to drop. And what happens to you? Taehyung asked. Jungkook met his gaze. I stopped running. Taehyung felt it then. The fear wasn't losing the world again. It was losing Jungkook to a version of himself that lived only in survival. I'm scared, Taehyung admitted. Every time you walk back into that light, it takes something from you. Jungkook stepped closer. And every time you pull away from it, it takes something from you too. They stood there, the ocean roaring like a witness that refused to take sides. The decision came quietly. They would go back together. The announcement rippled through media like a shockwave. Cameras waited. Commentators speculated. Narratives tried to reclaim them before they even spoke. Taehyung sat beside Jungkook at the hearing, hands clasped so tightly his fingers ached. When Jungkook stood to testify, the room shifted. Every breath sounded loud. He spoke without drama, without vengeance. He named names. He described rooms with no windows and deals made in silence. He admitted fear. He admitted mistakes. I stayed quiet because I thought silence would keep the people I loved safe, Jungkook said. I was wrong. Taehyung watched him, heart breaking and swelling all at once. When it was over, they didn't celebrate. They walked out into a storm of flashing lights, shoulders squared, eyes forward. The truth had weight. It always did. The backlash returned, sharper but shorter-lived. This time the cracks held. Investigations closed. Charges dissolved. The world moved on the way it always did, too fast, too careless. But something had shifted. Weeks later, Taehyung stood alone in a studio he hadn't entered in months. The lights felt unfamiliar. The mirror showed someone older, calmer, less willing to perform pain for applause. Jungkook watched from the doorway. You don't have to go back. I know, Taehyung said, but I want to go forward on my terms. The comeback wasn't loud. No grand declarations. Just music that sounded like breathing again. Audiences listened differently now. So did Taehyung. One night after a small show, Jungkook waited backstage. When Taehyung came off, eyes shining with something close to peace, Jungkook pulled him into a quiet embrace. You didn't disappear, Jungkook whispered. You transformed. Taehyung smiled into his shoulder. So did you. They returned home together, not hiding anymore, not chasing the noise either. The argument that once felt like the end now felt like a scar proof of survival. Later, lying in the dark, Taehyung spoke softly. If we argue again. Jungkook turned toward him. We will. Taehyung smiled. Then promise me one thing. What? Don't leave. Don't disappear inside yourself. Jungkook reached for his hand, steady and warm. Only if you promise not to disappear for me. Taehyung squeezed his fingers. Deal. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent and endless. Inside, two people who had been torn open by truth learned how to live with it. Not perfectly, but honestly. Time didn't rush them anymore. It moved differently now, slower in the mornings, quieter at night. The world outside continued to argue, to speculate, to recycle narratives that no longer belonged to them. Inside their shared space, life settled into something steady, not perfect, but real. Taehyung learned that healing wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself. It arrived in fragments, in the way Jungkook stopped flinching at sudden sounds, in the way Taehyung could stand on a stage without feeling like he was borrowing someone else's skin, in the way silence between them no longer felt like a threat. They talked more about small things at first, grocery lists, music they missed, dreams they'd postponed because surviving had taken priority, then about the bigger things, fear, anger, guilt that still surfaced unexpectedly. One night Taehyung sat at the piano, fingers resting on the keys without pressing them. Jungkook leaned against the doorframe, watching. "I used to think strength meant not breaking," Taehyung said quietly. "Now I think it means letting yourself be seen when you do." Jungkook nodded. "I thought protecting you meant carrying everything alone." Taehyung looked up, and now I know it meant trusting you enough to carry it together. The past still knocked sometimes. Old headlines resurfaced. Anonymous messages appeared and vanished. But they no longer ruled the room. They were noise, background, something that could be acknowledged without being obeyed. When Taehyung returned fully to public life, it was with boundaries that didn't bend. Interviews were shorter. Answers were honest but not exposed. The questions about that argument always came eventually. "Was that the hardest moment of your relationship?" someone asked. Taehyung paused, choosing his words carefully. "No," he said. "The hardest moments were the quiet ones after, when we had to decide whether we were willing to change." The audience didn't know what to do with that answer. Taehyung didn't mind. Jungkook stayed mostly out of the spotlight. When he did appear, it was intentional, measured. He spoke once at a closed forum, voice steady, eyes clear. "I don't want sympathy," he said. "I want accountability to be normal." The room had gone silent. Months passed. The story lost its edge. New scandals replaced it. New faces took over the headlines. That was how it always worked. One evening, they walked through a park at dusk, hands brushing but not interlocked, comfortable in the space between closeness and independence. Children laughed nearby. A street musician played something soft and unfinished. "Do you ever wish we could go back?" Jungkook asked. Taehyung thought for a moment. "No," he said. "I wish we'd learned sooner, but I don't wish it hadn't happened." Jungkook smiled faintly. "Me neither." Later that night, Taehyung sat alone, recording a message he wasn't sure he'd ever share. His voice was calm, but there was weight behind every word. "There was a moment," he said, "when I thought love meant endurance, that if I could just hold on longer, things would get better. But love isn't about who survives the longest. It's about who's willing to grow when holding on isn't enough." He stopped the recording and didn't post it. Some truths were meant to stay private. The anniversary of the argument arrived quietly. No reminders, no alarms, just an unspoken awareness. Jungkook cooked dinner that night, something simple. They ate slowly, savoring the ordinary. "Do you regret anything?" Jungkook asked. Taehyung considered the question carefully. "I regret the nights I didn't speak up sooner. I regret confusing silence with patience." Jungkook nodded. "I regret thinking I had to be alone to be strong." They clinked glasses gently, not in celebration but acknowledgement. Later, lying side by side, Taehyung turned toward Jungkook, studying the lines of his face softened by sleep. "If the world turns loud again," Taehyung said, "promise me we won't forget this version of ourselves." Jungkook opened his eyes. "The version that chooses honesty over fear." "The version that argues," Taehyung added softly, "but does abandon." Jungkook reached for his hand. "I promise." Morning arrived with pale light through the curtains. Taehyung woke before Jungkook, watching his chest rise and fall, steady and calm. He felt something settle in his chest that hadn't been there before. Peace didn't mean the absence of conflict. It meant knowing conflict wouldn't destroy them. Later that day, Taehyung stood before a small audience, no grand stage, no spectacle. Just a microphone and a room full of quiet attention. "People ask me what changed after that argument," he said. The truth is everything and nothing. We're still human, we still fail, but now we listen. And when things break, we repair them together. The applause was soft, genuine. As the lights dimmed, Taehyung stepped off stage and found Jungkook waiting as he always did now. No rushing, no hiding. They walked out into the evening side by side, not as symbols, not as headlines, but as two people who had chosen the harder path.